The title of this program is The God of the Old Testament, number 6. Let us say a prayer. This is Psalm 23 in the Douay-Rheims Bible. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and all they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas, and hath prepared it upon the rivers. Who shall ascend into the mountain of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? The innocent in hands, and clean of heart, who hath not taken his soul in vain, nor sworn deceitfully to his neighbor. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord, and mercy from God his Savior. Psalm 23, the first 5 verses. In the last program, I spoke with considerable disrespect of the way in which the modern scientific community speaks of hundreds of millions and billions of years with all the confidence of an eyewitness. It is generally known that most dating efforts of historical artifacts is done by the radiocarbon dating process, the science of which is referred to as radiometry. This is the technique of determining the age of something by measuring the rate of its elemental decay. Students and the public in general are under the impression that this technique is reliable, when in fact there is no reliability to it whatsoever. It is not uncommon for repeated tests to register differences of millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of years. Apparently the tests are not altogether useless, however, when the object being tested has been kept in a continuously controlled condition for the duration of its existence, or at least protected from the harsh treatment of the out of doors. An example of this was shown in the testing of the Holy Shroud of Turin in 1993. After protracted and also respectful negotiations, a group of American scientists obtained permission from the Holy See to take 2 cuttings from the shroud for testing. The carbon-14 test indicated that the cloth came into existence in the 13th century, and so it was bruited around the world. The honorable scientists who carried out this test made a great effort to conceal the fact that the cloth tested and reported on did not come from the shroud, but another piece of cloth whose age they knew already. As the saying goes, murder will out. Since their ruse was discovered, the scientists involved have been curiously unavailable for comment. The problem with the dating of natural things, such as rocks and bones and meteors and the like, is that countless factors, known and unknown, cause wide variation in the amount of radioactive decay from potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium, uranium, and lead. The result is that radiometry is totally unreliable, and scientists know it, but cannot admit it, because they have used it to establish the incredible fictitious ages of everything in the universe. In the last program, I spoke to you about a supposed Martian meteorite whose scientific name is ALH 84001, which NASA physicists insist is 4.5 billion years old, almost a billion years older than several other similar rocks. The article in Science News of December 14, 1996, informs us that the older rock gives evidence of having contained moisture in eons past. What the article did not say is that immersion in water causes a loss of uranium, so that the dating of the meteor would be very inaccurate if it had been on the earth at the time of the deluge. Thus also, if the earth were immersed in water due to the biblical flood, the old age of the earth, which is now put at hundreds of millions of years, would have been grossly exaggerated. Over the last few years, creationist scientists have developed several methods whereby they can measure the age of the earth. One such method is a measurement of the earth's heat loss. The heat which was created within the earth by radioactive decay and which combined with the primordial heat of the earth is being constantly depleted. The heat flow which can be measured is determined from the product of the thermal gradient and the thermal conductivity of the earth's rock. If the gradient is measured below 100 feet and the thermal conductivity is taken from the same sample, the rate of heat flow out of the earth can be determined accurately. The most reliable calculations known to date indicate that the earth has been losing its heat for some thousands of years, presumably since its creation. The cooling time of the earth leaves no doubt that its age must be reckoned in terms of a few thousand years, and certainly not in terms of millions or billions of years, as evolutionary theories require and as mainstream scientists claim. A more interesting method for measuring the age of the earth is the measurement of the earth's magnetic field. It has been established that the earth's magnetism is due to the fact that there is an electric current circulating in the molten core of the earth. The electromagnet is vastly stronger than any man-made magnet. Due to the fact that the Earth's magnet is an electromagnet, we now understand that the electric current within the Earth must continue to flow, or there will be no magnet. We understand further that the Earth's magnetism cannot be a permanent phenomenon, because electric current dissipates energy, which is heat loss, and there is a limited supply of energy available to it. This means that the Earth's magnet is running down. It is this dissipation phenomenon that gives clues to the history and destiny of the Earth's magnetic field. The electromagnet in the core of the Earth is so strong that its magnetic field extends out to the surface of the Earth and far beyond. We can observe this field by the twist that it exerts on a compass needle, making it point north. What we do not see, but what is of vastly more importance, is the magnetic shield which this field provides for the Earth's environment. Most of the solar wind and some of the cosmic rays, both harmful forms of electrically charged radiation, are deflected away from the Earth's magnetic field before it reaches the Earth. Theory and confirming satellite measurements indicates that the Earth's magnetic field exerts pressure on the solar wind. This pressure produces a bow wave, sometimes called a shock front, out several Earth radii from the Earth. The solar winds tend to flow around this bow wave, missing the Earth and providing our environment with shielding from this hazardous radiation. Cosmic rays are high-speed, positively charged particles coming in from outer space from all directions. The Earth's magnetic field similarly exerts a force on these moving charges. That force is always in a direction that is at right angles to both the direction of their motion and to the direction of the magnetic field. Hence, unless the particle motion is in precisely the same direction as the magnetic field, there is a force tending to turn the ray away and causing it to miss the Earth. Some of the cosmic rays come in so fast and at such angles that the present magnetic field is not strong enough to provide enough bending for them to miss the Earth. In the polar regions, some rays may come in along the lines of force and experience no deflection. Hence there is insufficient magnetic shield to provide total protection. Nevertheless, a substantial amount of shielding from solar wind and cosmic radiation does take place. As the magnetic field has decayed, this environmental protection has diminished. The beautifully colored auroral displays, which we call the aurora borealis in the Arctic and Antarctic, result from radiation that does come into the atmosphere. Those rays are guided in along the magnetic lines of force which merge on the Earth near the poles. No deflecting force is exerted on them. Consequently, there is more radiation impinging on the Earth's atmosphere in the polar regions. The famous scientist Horace Lamb provided a scientific basis for the explanation of the present source of the Earth's magnetic field. There are free currents, a relic of an origin of the past, circulating inside the Earth, which produce the magnetic field. These currents are gradually dissipating, and as a consequence, the magnetic field of the Earth is also dissipating. Lamb's theory requires that the region in which this current flows have reasonable, good electric conductivity, higher than that observed in the crust of the Earth. Present knowledge, based on seismic analysis, reveals that there is a fluid core in the Earth. It is thought to contain molten iron because the computed density of this portion of the Earth is approximately the same as the density of iron, and the temperature is very great in the core. The metallic core provides the conductivity required to meet the Lamb conditions for the freely decaying currents which last for a long time. The current is still coasting, but it cannot continue indefinitely because of the resistance in the core. The confirmation of Lamb's theory rests upon observed decay of the Earth's magnetic field. Lamb's theory requires this decay and relates the decay rate to the conductivity and size of the Earth's core. Lamb was not able to give an accurate prediction of the rate of decay of the Earth's magnetic field because he did not know about the Earth's molten core, nor was he given the satisfaction of seeing the observational data confirm his theory. Nevertheless, his rigorous theoretical work has provided the only physically sound explanation of the source of the Earth's magnetic field. The observational confirmation of Lamb's theory rests on a long series of measurements that started with those of Carl Gauss. Gauss, whose dates were from 1777 to 1855, invented a magnetometer to measure the absolute value of the magnetic field at various places around the Earth. He then developed the mathematical means of reducing these worldwide field measurements to one number, a number that represented the total strength of the Earth's magnet, which is also called the Earth's magnetic moment. This value of the total strength of the Earth's magnet was first recorded in 1835. Many observations and reductions have been made since then. There are now ample data to show that the total strength of the Earth's magnet has been decaying at a relatively rapid rate. It is in fact so large a rate of decay that the noted scientist Sidney Chapman wrote, "When the great scale of the phenomenon is considered, this must seem a remarkably large and rapid secular change, not paralleled for any other worldwide geophysical property." Therefore, Lamb's theory of the decay of the Earth's magnetic field has the confirmation of more than 130 years of real-time observations. This is a much longer period of real-time confirmation than can be claimed for most decay processes. such as, for example, the decay of radioactive substances. Hence, our knowledge of the source and behavior of the Earth's magnetic field rests on impeccable physics and extensive observational confirmation. Lamb's solution to the source of the Earth's magnetic field shows that the strength of the magnet decays exponentially. This type of decay is more easily understood in terms of its half-life, the time required for the value to decrease by a factor of 1/2. The half-life of the Earth's magnetic moment is 1400 years. This value is figured on a computer by applying the appropriate statistical analysis to all of the available real-time data, the data that cover 130 years of worldwide observations. This 1400-year half-life is a surprisingly short half-life from an historical point of view. It means that every 1400 years, the Earth's magnet loses half of the strength that it had at the beginning of that period. In 7,000 years, the Earth's magnetic field has decayed to 1/32 of its initial value. Because the Earth's magnetic moment is decaying at a known rate, it can be used as a clock for geologic timing. Like a grandfather clock, the Earth's magnetic clock depended upon stored energy and tends to run down. Unlike the grandfather clock that must be rewound every 8 days, the Earth's magnetic clock started with so much energy that it is still running from its initial winding. The spring for this remarkable clock is the energy contained in the magnetic field of the Earth. The clock action is based on the dependable decay rate, namely, decaying by the factor of 1/2 of every 1400 years. If all other clocks were to be lost at some time in the future, before the Earth's magnetic clock runs down, it would be theoretically possible to determine the calendar year from this magnetic clock. Similarly, it is theoretically possible to date events in the past by this geologic clock, if some means is devised accurately to determine the value of the Earth's magnetic moment that was concurrent with the event. That is, however, a very difficult requirement. Even today, the Earth's magnetic moment cannot be accurately determined from a local measurement of the magnetic field. There are too many local variations in the magnetic field. These variations may be due to telluric currents, local bodies, diurnal variations, that is, daily variations from extraterrestrial causes and other causes. To reduce the total effect over the Earth into one value, namely the magnetic moment, requires statistical analysis covering much more information than is observable in one locality. Hence, like all other geophysical dating methods, the magnetic clock has its difficulties. Nevertheless, its spring limit puts a restriction on the age of the Earth's magnetic field. Michael Faraday discovered the physical principle that an electric current is induced in a conductive loop any time there is a change in the amount of magnetic flux threading through that loop. When a permanent magnet is withdrawn from a coil of wire, an electric current is induced in the wire. This induced current produces an induced magnetic field. In the case of an electromagnet, if the current source is withdrawn, the decaying field similarly induces a bolstering current. This process is called self-induction, and it prevents the electromagnet from dying out instantaneously. There is always some time required for it to decay. If it were not for this self-induction, the Earth's magnetic field would have died out long ago. Since there is no dynamo in the core of the earth to keep that current going, there is a tendency for the current to stop, but the self-induction principle comes into play, slowing the net loss of the magnetic field. The decay time for the Earth's magnetic field is quite long. The time constant has been computed from the observational data. At the same time, the half-life was computed and was found, when converted from seconds to years, to have the value of 1970 years. This is an interesting time constant. It means that the value of the Earth's magnetic field in the decade of 1970 AD is only about 37% of what it was at the time of the birth of Christ. Knowing that the Earth's magnetic field is decaying and that its half-life is 1400 years, one might ask, when will the Earth's magnetic field vanish? This question is a little difficult to answer because the decay is exponential. If the decay were linear, the answer would be easy to obtain. A 1965 government publication makes the assumption that the decay is linear and fixes the date at AD 3991, as seen in the following quote. Since the time of Gauss's measurements, the Earth's dipole moment has decreased, sensibly linearly, at approximately the rate of 5% per 100 years. Assuming these rates to persist, our analysis discloses that the dipole moment will vanish in AD 3991. We may arbitrarily assume that the vanishing point is 1/100th of the present value of the Earth's field. Then the 1400-year half-life exponential decay rate can be used to show that the Earth's magnetic field will vanish in about AD 11,000, roughly 9,000 years from now. However, its effectiveness as a magnetic shield for environmental protection will be gone long before that date. When all known contingencies and factors are taken into consideration, we can conclude that the decay of the magnetic field is exponential, and the vanishing date is nearer AD 11,000 than AD 3991. One of the consequences of the decay of the Earth's magnetic field is the increasing amount of radiation reaching the Earth. More solar wind and cosmic rays impinge on the Earth. The increase in cosmic radiation reaching the atmosphere increases the carbon-14 production rate. Cosmic rays produce neutrons in the atmosphere, which in turn collide with nitrogen and produce carbon-14. Hence, the production rate of carbon-14 is greater now than in the past. Carbon-14 dating has been based on the assumption that the production rate is constant, but we now know that the production rate is not constant. The fact that the production rate was less in the past than at present alters the previously computed carbon-14 dates, revising them to a younger age. The correction is progressively greater for the older dates because of the exponential character of the decay. This means that the older dates in carbon-14 dating are really not that old and should be corrected to younger dates. If the initial value of the Earth's magnet were known, a date could be established for the origin of the magnetic field. This would be done by extrapolating backward on the exponential decay curve, but we do not know what the initial value was. The magnetic field of a magnetic star with its thermonuclear source is about 100 Gauss. One would certainly not expect the Earth to have a magnetic field as great as that of a magnetic star. So it is not likely that the Earth's magnetic field was ever that great. This puts a probable upper limit on the initial value of the Earth's magnetic field of less than 100 Gauss. Applying the reasonable premise that the Earth never had a magnetic field as great as that of a magnetic star, one can note that the origin of the Earth's magnetic field had to be more recent than 8000 BC. That is to say, the origin of the Earth's magnetic field was less than 10,000 years ago. Just how much more recent than 10,000 cannot be determined from present scientific knowledge. If one assumes that the initial value of the Earth's magnetic field were about 1 order of magnitude less than that of a magnetic star, the origin would have been about 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. This illustrative value was used, of course, because it is consistent with the approximate creation date that can be computed from biblical chronology. It does show the scientific plausibility of an age for the Earth's magnetic field that is within the range of the biblically determined age for the Earth. The only alternative to a young age for the Earth's magnetic field is to deny the existence of decay in the Earth's magnetic field. Not a very astute stand for a scientist in view of the strong physics upon which Sir Horace Lamb's theory is based and the 130 years of worldwide real-time data to substantiate it. The origin of the Earth's magnetic field is undoubtedly related to the origin of the Earth. There is no reason to believe that the magnetic field was wound up at some geologic time after the origin of the Earth. If one assumes an origin as recent as 5000 BC, the magnetic moment would have been at least 2.6 times 10 to the 24th power ampere meter. At the present time, no planet is thought to have a magnet of that strength. It appears then that nothing short of an origin of the Earth could initiate such a strong magnet. Hence the conclusion is reached that the Earth's magnetic field was created in the beginning, at the time of the creation of the Earth, and has been continually decaying ever since. Our evaluation of real-time data and the association of the origin of the magnetic field with the origin of the Earth provides the scientific plausibility of an age of the Earth that is consistent with an age reckoned from biblical chronology. If you, dear listener, should wonder why I should take so much time to speak of this matter, it is in the hope that you would come to the obvious conclusion that if, as Genesis says, the earth were the first physical thing which God created, and all the heavenly bodies were created on the 4th day of creation week, then all these are younger by a few days than the earth. If this be the case, and of course creationist physicists challenge their evolutionist counterparts to disprove it, the latter have their work cut out for them. To date, their only defense is simply to deny the facts. Are you surprised?
In closing, we want to thank our devoted audience in Maryland, Virginia, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine, and our brand new audience in Florida for their loyal and generous support. With your help and God's grace, we will continue to broadcast the truth of the Catholic faith without hesitation, without compromise, and without apology. You may correspond with Father Wathen by addressing your letters to the post office box given at the close of this program,